Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Matt Watson. Hi, Matt.
What's going on, man?
I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get anybody's attention today.
What's up, Matt?
Right. But then another Matt. And so, today we're going to discuss artificial intelligence startups. And I think that the first thing we're going to do is get the AI to determine which Matt we're talking to today, because with us, we've got Matt Moody, the CEO of Bellwether. Hi, Matts.
What's
Hello.
up?
Yeah.
Everybody says hi at once.
I know. Oh, man. So, yeah, I guess this is a little confusing as well, because if you say, well, Matt,
You can call me Matthew today.
I don't let anybody. Do you let anybody?
I answer to that one though too.
Do you?
sometimes,
I don't
yeah.
I don't. The only person that ever called me Matthew was my grandmother. Bless her heart. She's not with us anymore.
Yeah.
And with that, I became good old Matt. All right. So Matt Moody, Mr. Moody. I'll just call you Master Watson.
All right, Master Watson it is.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, before we get started, I do need to let everyone know that this episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io. We can help you build a software development team quickly and affordably. While you're checking us out at Fullscale.io, I also want you to go to Bellwether, BELLWETHR.com, so you can get a better idea of what Matt Moody does over there. And I'm going to give him a few minutes to go ahead and give us the breakdown. Welcome back, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So you want the overview?
Yeah. It's been about 150 episodes since you were in here before. And if you want to go search through the feed, there was I believe we discussed machine learning before. We've had a couple of rounds at that, but you do some interesting stuff. So I think it'd probably be best to assume that people need an update.
Sure. Yeah. So in a sense, sort of our summary is that it's basically like autopilot for customer attention. So we have a suite of artificial intelligence applications that are focused on different points in the customer lifecycle and sort of figure out what to do in those scenarios in order to, basically come out with a better outcome.
A better outcome regarding
Largely retention. The customer continues on at the same price point or package or potentially upgrades.
Okay, so to break it down for the real people, Bellwether helps businesses not churn their customers.
Yep.
Not lose customers.
Yeah, which is an important part, largely because keeping the clients or customers you have is more affordable than finding new ones, right?
So when I was at Einstein Brothers yesterday and it took them 22 minutes to give me 6 bagels, that should have been a red flag probably in some system somewhere of like their customer service sucks and they might lose some customers.
How would they even measure that?
Their receipts, their tracking system. I have my receipt and then it goes through their little system and they track the orders and they know when they finished it.
They know how they
22 minutes.
They know to buy 6 bagels.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
You should have gotten a notification that said apologies for the delay and here's a discount.
Did they make the bagels for
I
you
don't
while
know,
you
man.
waited? Is that the problem?
But I mean, those are the kinds of signals in the noise, right? Let's say they have 1,000 restaurants. Everybody will see, okay, and one in this 1,000 probably going to have some customer service problems now.
So overall, machine learning and artificial intelligence are all the rage when it comes to startups. I've mentioned a few times over the last who knows how many episodes, but when I was out at TechCrunch in October of 2019, it was like every place, every display we stopped at had the words, "Our machine learning algorithm." And it became kind of a joke, because like it was like everything had it. I felt like it was a little oversold. I doubt that in no way were all of those people actually doing true machine learning stuff or artificial intelligence. But I mean, almost everyone seemed to be representing it. As we discuss AI startups, can you give us, like, you actually do the stuff. and you're an expert you're a subject matter expert on it. So what determines whether or not you're using machine learning / artificial intelligence?
Well, that's subjective.
Right. Well, that's my point. Right.
Yeah, because I was going to say right when you were talking about how everybody everybody says they have it, and I'm like, well, linear regression isn't all that difficult, and I mean, depends on who you ask. That can be machine learning.
Well, what is linear regression?
So a linear regression model,
yeah,
basically you're going to predict a value that's sort of linear,
building like a forecast and a chart, kind of, right? Like
yeah. I mean, you sort of look at it as
a forecast line in a chart, and it should be above or below the forecast, like simple math equation.
Yep.
I used a really basic example, like on GigaBook. After you use it for about a week, it'll just put your most popular service at the top of the drop down, so you don't have to like drop it down. I was like, on some levels, we could call that machine learning, but it's not.
It's artificial intelligence.
Yeah. That's like the. I mean, I guess it's what do they say? Like artificial intelligence. It's sort of like you just keep moving the goalposts. Once you get closer, then it's like, oh, it's not really as good as me at doing it, but yeah,
a better algorithm.
So, I mean, I think that so many of the companies, the early stage businesses that we stopped and talked to, and, I'm not, taking jabs at them, but I think that saying that they're using a lot of the stuff is, an attempt to feel a lot more cutting edge and to attract investors in a space that is pretty hot.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the big challenge, and this is one of the things that we ran into, is that, Bellwether sort of originated as a technology innovation. So we were innovating on machine learning itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what we kind of learned along the way was that's not exactly that's not easy to sell. You have to have some sort of value proposition that's specific to, some problem. And so machine learning is, most of the applications of it's a feature. It's not really a full product. So that's why, when I said that we handle customer retention, that's really the problem that we solve. Now we're applying machine learning to that.
When you started out, what exactly were you doing then? You like a new type of algorithm or something, but you didn't know what to do with the algorithm, or where did that start?
So really what it started with was that at the very beginning, I was actually just using a classification type model to predict the risk score, the likelihood of a customer canceling a service.
Okay.
And in building machine learning models, there's sort of like a training process, which is hey, we're going to find the patterns in the data. And then there's the inference, which is now we're going to go use it. And we're going to compare new instances against the patterns from the old, where you kind of knew an outcome. The innovation for us was that that process of going back. So once you take a model, you train it on this old set of data, and you deploy it, and you start using it. Well, it's not learning anything else. So as time moves on and you have new data coming in, you're adding more information, and technically it's the most relevant because it's brand new. It's what's going on right now. That's not included in your model. So you have to go back and train again. And so I just got annoyed with that whole process of, hey, I've got to run this batch process at the beginning, deploy it, and then I got to go back and do it again, back and forth. So what we did was basically came up with a way to do it in continuous, to where we could continuously train the model at the same time. So we can train it once, deploy it, then continue training it while it's deployed, instead of having to pull it back down and run sort of that manual process again.
Does that let you put definitive marks in the timeline, so you can also measure if you're actually getting better based on the data that has been provided?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can continue with your validation. So the validation is like where you basically are testing known outcomes. Like you could say, hey, I knew that customer left. We'll send it over and we'll see, what would be the prediction on that. And then you basically will be able to see, okay, hey, it's selecting this customer did indeed leave.
When you were here before, I think we were using a phone company or something as an example.
Yeah, telecommunications.
Yeah.
That was sort of the origin for us.
And that certain triggers, like someone calling in to customer support, or so many calls within X amount of time, would often correlate to a client or a user ending their subscription per se. And so at that point, when you look at old data compared to new data, it what your company does is create alerts or different kinds of information that says, hey, if this occurs,
we're a little different.
You might want to get proactive.
It's a little different now. So one of the things we learned in doing that, since the last time I was here, we kind of talked about retention sort of as a general, sort of an ocean problem. And our solution at the time was sort of a boil the ocean. Hey, find out, there's a problem. Since then, what we figured out was that, there's all these little events that happen throughout the customer lifecycle. And what we do now is that we'll use the different kind of, now we're using a different kind of machine learning known as reinforcement learning, where we want to take the pattern in the data, and then we want to figure out, okay, of 10 different things you could do with a customer, which one of those, when you combine that with the pattern of the customer and their behavior, results in them continuing on for 30 days, 60 days, maybe upgrading. So we figure out which of those actions and we trigger them automatically.
Okay.
And so what we're doing now is that we've figured out little events that happen in sort of general, and then we'll tie in what we call an engine, which is just one of these models. We'll tie it into these events. So for example, I'll get this into something tangible here. The
Come on, Matt. This makes sense to all of us. This isn't perfectly natural and intuitive.
The event that we found that's the most effective place to start is the cancel.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've got your subscription to whatever it is, and you move to cancel, there's sort of two schools of thought. There's the, hey, now I'm going to make them call me, which is the sort of hostage holding. Then you also have the, hey, here, just click the button and you're on. So I did that with like my HBO subscription. After Game of Thrones was over, cancel, nothing. So what we do now is that we connect to that. We deliver basically it's a UI. I mean, it basically walks the customer through. They click cancel and it says, hey, let's find out a little bit more information about what's going wrong. So we capture some context, and then we start walking them through basically different options as far as here, you don't want to run them through 20 different options. So you kind of have to figure out what's the sequence that gets them to stay.
So at that point, you're operating almost as a plugin?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yep. That's where we start now. And then what we found was that we sort of reverse engineer the entire customer lifecycle.
Sure.
So we'll start at the very end. We'll figure out now what's going wrong. We'll find out, and not just what's going wrong, but also what can be done to solve it on a personalized level.
And so for that same customer that's canceling, you already had in your system somewhere other like transactional details, the events and things.
Yep. So we'll connect to those.
So do you give them like a different experience when they try to cancel based on the history that you know about the account?
Yep. So what we'll do is that we'll sync up when one of our business customers signs up, then they can connect, to a CRM or CDP or whatever, and we'll get the context from there. So we'll take that, so when you go to click cancel, basically it launches essentially the embedded the widget there loads up and says, hey, all right, let's figure out what's going wrong. And it basically walks them through. We do a little bit of data capture there to figure out what's going wrong. What could be done to save, what could change their mind, along with basically selecting the sequence of offers that gets them most likely to stay. So, and to kind of bring that full circle here, then, so right now we're saving about, on average, 35% of the people that go through it,
that's huge,
massive in comparison to the other solutions that are
sure.
But part of what you do is also helping the companies identify people that could be at risk before they get that far, right?
Yeah. What we're doing is we're starting with the application that handles the cancel. We're calling that one. It's called Retention Engine. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing is that's step one, because what we're also finding there is that when the data that we capture there is more effective at sort of the predictive. It adds more when you start.
Because it trains trains your algorithms, and
it also helps find out, like, if you find out that, hey, maybe, for example, one of the funniest things we found was that when customers are going to cancel, a 17% discount is more likely to save them than a 20% discount. Why? We have no idea. It's a weird thing. We had one customer that did it, and we just kind of somebody on the team saw it and was like, this is kind of, who throws out a 17% discount, A, and then B, why is it being selected so often? So we started advising it to a few more, and I, again, don't know why, but.
Well, we had an episode the other day about digital marketing, and that was one of the things I mentioned there was so much of this is A/B testing, right? And you just trying different things, and sometimes the weirdest things have the different outcome. It's just it can be very bizarre, the randomness of these things.
So in the retention engine, the widget that plugs into you are omni industry now, right? Meaning because I think that the last time you were here, that was probably a year ago.
Maybe it was actually more.
Maybe even longer. Right,
Yeah.
right. And I want to talk a little bit about it. It sounds like you guys have evolved this significantly. You were focused on a small number of industries at the time. And so now you fanned this out to be useful to lots of different industries. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. I mean, ultimately we say anything that's sort of a recurring,
Sure.
Sort of thing. I mean, and that's actually just a starting point. Naturally, we want to make sure that we're, the hardest thing for us has always been when asked, "Hey, could you solve this?"
Yeah.
The answer is always, "Yep."
Well, and that was
Which
the
is
next.
not
That was the
great.
next question I had. So within like the retention engine widget, I think businesses usually don't know what the hell's wrong with them. Like that's not a short-sighted statement. So many different businesses, especially big ones, are sometimes really aloof when it comes to like, why are people quitting? Does from the data you collect, does the widget also self-adjust?
Yes. Yeah. So they can,
Right.
they can basically jump in there. So our customers can, we have one customer that literally spends, it wasn't our idea that they were going to spend that much time in the console looking at the data, but they're constantly looking at it. I mean, it's a pretty big customer. So they've got thousands of people that go click the cancel button.
Yeah.
And
being able to save even a small percentage of them would be a huge win. If you get in big numbers, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Well, that's my question for you is, so based on your current business that you do your customers have to, like, they're canceling thousands of people a month versus like, say Stackify, maybe we lose 20 customers a month. So we wouldn't get a lot of value out of this because the volume is so low.
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple different ways to look at it. We look at it as, hey, every business has endings and conclusions, and there's got to be a better way to handle it. There's got to be value that can be extracted there, whether it's just information or if it's information plus saving a greater number of customers. Because ultimately, I mean, that's the one thing we kind of look at as a startup is that, we want to go learn. The most important thing to do, I mean, outside of making money is to learn and to figure out what can be done. So, most of the customers that we have, they're more B2C. So they've got a larger volume. That being said, there's still customer, if you have a business and customers cancel, the ability for retention engine to create better outcomes is still proving better than, sort of like the phone call method.
Since the last time I saw you, I listened to an Audible about data science. So now I'm a data scientist, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
You are.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that most people that call themselves data scientists have a similar level of training as to what I just mentioned on some days. But no, I learned that, I mean, obviously with data science and machine learning, AI, the larger the data sets, the better off you are.
Sometimes.
Right. Well, then in case of the phone company, they were talking about the amount of data that they collect, and it's so freaking massive that like there's even like a storage issue because the phone companies are required to keep so much data for so long, and they just have like such a mega amount of it. It's like, whoa, where do we put it? Is there a minimum amount of quote data or sample size that AI needs to begin to be effective? Just on a general level.
So I can get you the link. One of the things that we learned is that one of the big problems in any company adopting machine learning is that sort of idea that's the recurring theme is that you have to have a ton of data or it's useless.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is that it actually that's more harmful in a lot of cases because you can start with what we would call low dimensionality, where you don't have that much data. You would maybe have a lot of examples, but you don't want to have that many features. So, what you want to be, what you want to do in order to make it effective is sort of you can use simpler algorithms to kind of get you off the ground, and then be purposeful about the dimensionality. So that means like, hey, we have location data, we have where this customer is located, we have how long they've been a customer. The idea a lot of times is, well, just throw everything else we've got in there. Well, most of it's going to be useless. So you want to be purposeful about, hey, we're going to add this new feature in there and see if that gives us an uptick. Is this effective? So we found that you end up with better results. You also start getting a lot faster return on investment. And then it becomes the question of, hey, okay, this looks good. How do we improve it? And that usually ends up meaning let's figure out some other features that we think might be important.
Part of these issues can be sunk by software developers that want to plan for every worst case scenario and everything. They're like, something working 80% of the time to most software developers is never good enough. They want it to work 101% of the time. And so it will fail because it doesn't work 100. Working 80% of the time is an absolute failure to most software developers. And it's kind of a cultural problem with developers, is they're very pessimistic. Like, well, it doesn't work in this scenario. And it's like, we could do a training out. We have Mickey Mouse in our office. I keep looking at Mickey. And I'm like, we could easily build something to take pictures of Mickey and figure out and recognize that the picture has Mickey in it, right? But some developer would be like, well, if it's an animated version of Mickey, it won't find it. We cannot ship this product. It is not good. Like, that's literally the problem you run into with this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas at business, you'd be like, well, like 90% of the time, yeah, we would find stuffed animals of Mickey, and that would be a huge win. Nope, not good enough.
I've had this discussion. That's not just software developers. That's end clients, users, pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
I've had this discussion going back to like the very first users we had at GigaBook. And I would talk to them and they'd say, this only does 90% of what I need it to do. I'm like, that's a huge win,
right,
man. Congrats. I would literally sometimes say, oh, that's great. And they'd be like, no. I'm like, if you automated 90% of anything, that's like a big win. Like,
done well.
Be happy you only have 10% left. But the short-sighted view of that was often, no, this doesn't do what we need it to do. We can't use this. And I'm sitting there going, why not?
Well, and it's like with what you do, what you guys do, right? It's like, we can help reduce churn, reduce cancellations. Even if it's 80% good, like, that's a huge win. Yeah, there's outliers. We're never going to be perfect and whatever. But people get so hung up on this type of technology where they think it's going to solve all the problems. But, it's baby steps, and figure out how to continue to tweak and tune it.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that I have to claim that we did the exact same thing. When we first started talking to customers, the idea when they said, hey, what data do we need? And I would basically say all of it.
All of it.
Yeah.
Give me all of it. And then, we just, like every startup, you learn and go, oh, hey, that was a bad idea. Not only did that slow down the sales cycle, and effectively slowed down how fast they were able to save customers, because we could have rolled out what we had really easily and actually started saving customers immediately.
Well, and you guys could be like, hey, they canceled and we didn't predict that one. Our software sucks.
Yeah.
Well, you're not gonna predict all of them.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
Well,
and at some point in time, it's like, it's good enough. It's a huge value.
Is that because sometimes people have legitimate reasons for canceling a subscription
Well,
that
sure,
you just
yeah.
can't fix? Like,
Yeah, sure.
I'm moving to New Zealand and I want a local phone number there. I mean, I'm going to stop. And, that part of it, I think in anything that, subscriptions are it now. It used to, what was it, 20 years ago when you get a actual disc? Hey, remember CD-ROM?
Hey, I used to sell computers at Sears, and we'd give you $400 off that computer if you signed up for AOL or whatever.
Mentioning things that are antiquated.
Remember that? Remember those days?
Yeah.
Mentioning things that are antiquated, old, and no longer all the rage. Sears.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
What's that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like someone said newspaper to me the other day, and I said, "What's a newspaper?" And they looked at me like I was dumb. I was like, "But seriously,
Speaking of that, I saw the Kansas City Star is filing
for bankruptcy.
I was actually a little excited, and the reason why is they send me these coupons on every Wednesday in the mail, and for the life of me, I cannot unsubscribe from the shit, so I have to throw it away every Wednesday. I've emailed them multiple times, begging them to stop mailing me these damn coupons. that's the world we live in.
Yeah, and a good AI algorithm would figure out somehow that you never used
I don't
them,
want these coupons.
and that they would save money by not sending them.
I don't even know if you need an algorithm for that.
Yeah.
We clearly need machine learning.
It's like the phone book, the gigantic phone book that still gets
Oh,
thrown.
I don't get that one anymore.
Oh, God,
thank
I do.
God. I hate that.
Oh.
It just goes right in my recycle.
It's the way I am with
I'm
those damn coupons.
Does anyone use these? So
Yeah.
Apparently around where I live.
But you're right. Everything these days is subscription based.
yeah. So, but being able to hang on to that is the key. And
You don't want people to cancel their subscriptions.
and regardless of what stage your business is in, if you collect subscriptions, that's a KPI, key performance indicator of whether, if you're a early stage startup, it's if you're gaining any traction, if you're growing, and these are things that are key ingredients in whether you maybe get funding or whether you do a lot of different things. Now, like you said, Matt, sometimes you can't, like people will cancel their GigaBook subscription and they'll just say, I'm not using it. Meaning like no one is making appointments at my business because my business isn't that great.
Well, and I think that's the kind of thing that Bellwether...
I can't save that though.
But that's one of the things that Bellwether could help with, right? Is to tell GigaBook, hey, you have customers that aren't really using the product.
True.
They're high risk to cancel. You need to call them and offer them some free training.
Or something. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a great point.
One of the other things that we'll do on that is not only just find out, we want to save the customers that can be saved, but we want to find out a little bit more what's wrong. That way you can kind of figure out maybe there's, a different tier that needs to be offered there for somebody that's maybe a little lower activity. Or, a lot of times what we find is that, I think a lot of times when somebody goes to cancel, the immediate reaction is, we'll cut the price.
Yeah.
But what you find is that a lot of times it has nothing to do with that. And that's one of the nice things about the way that our system works is that it figures out when that's available, when that is a likely resolution, and when it's not.
Sure.
And when you may just say, hey, guess what? We have this new feature coming. And that ends up being, okay, well, for that, I might hang around.
Well, from an overall business development standpoint, understanding why people don't want to use whatever it is that you do is pretty valuable as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
It tells you where you need to improve or what's wrong or so on and so. All right. So does Bellwether do you do other stuff other than customer retention?
We have some additional engines that are in there. We sell them on sort of like an enterprise level. So what we do is we built the platform, the technology that's sort of the, it basically automates these things, automates the different intervention. Then we have the prepackaged ones where we say, it's for this specific problem. And then we have,
industry kind of specific.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have the different APIs then where we'll let, a larger enterprise integrate those into their own
I've got
system.
an idea for you.
Okay.
I think you need to make a mode where you go back to the business and you tell the business, these customers are your biggest pain in the ass and you need to cancel these customers.
By the way, that's a great idea.
That is a good
I've talked about that a lot.
proactive.
Well, I've talked about that a lot because I think that a lot of the Matt DeCoursey school of customer service is non-standard. But the customer isn't always right. And sometimes you can look at stuff like we fired a couple users at GigaBook because we had two different people. These are two separate users that at one point were 80% of support tickets in a given month. That's not because things were broken. They're just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And these people, they make up $15 a month worth of revenue in both cases. I would rather just tell you to go use something else. I'd rather give you your money back and tell you to pound sand because it's a better business decision first off, anyone that can put in 80% of all support tickets or requests. Wow.
Not all churn is bad.
Yeah, right. That's my point is not all customers are great. Not all users are great. And you got to kind of pick and choose your battles. And some of that, like if a single user at GigaBook wants to churn, I mean, we got to just kind of shrug our shoulders and move on. I'm more worried about retaining the people that have multiple seats in their account and, seem to have some ability to grow.
And that's one of the things we handle for in the context.
Right.
So we don't call it data, we'll call it context. And when we connect, and then we can see, okay, hey, this is a customer that's actually, maybe paying. Hey, that's always helpful. And maybe they have a higher lifetime value. And obviously, you're more willing. And so what we'll do there in a lot of cases is that we have where, hey, if one of our high lifetime value customers decides they want to cancel, maybe we want to talk to them first.
Sure.
So let's route a call to that customer. And maybe that needs to be somebody higher up the food chain that takes that call. So
I think another interesting use case. So you look at Stackify, you have a whole lot of users on Prefix is the free
Yes.
product. So in some cases, some of those users are probably a lot more active than others. So being able to understand do you have an awareness of who is really using that and who you might be able to approach to say, hey, you might want to try the paid product?
A little bit, not a whole lot, but we have a slight amount of visibility of who downloaded it and if they actually use it.
I see.
But
and in those cases, a conversion or a retention are kind of the same thing, or they can be.
And we're going to release a new version of Prefix, our free product at Stackify. And one of the things we want to do in the new version is actually have a paid version too. So, and so ideally what we'd like to know is, hey, we have 2 or 3 users at this company using it. Okay, that's a signal to us of like, okay, we should find the manager there or somebody and figure out how do we sell this to the whole team.
And I think there's some other triggers too. Like I think at one point we had discussed that if a user had like an actual domain, like a business domain, as opposed
versus
to like
Gmail
or something, like they were like much more likely to do something.
We've looked a lot of that cohort kind of data on who signs up for even Stackify or paid product and figuring out do they convert or not convert. And yeah, people who sign up with Gmail accounts like convert at like 1% or 2%, or like something ridiculously low, versus ones who have real business emails. Yeah. That's not really machine learning. It was like pretty simple. Like
not needed for that one.
Don't need it for that one.
So, a few minutes ago,
but these little things matter.
Well, they do. Sure. Now, a few minutes ago, you mentioned, getting a quote return on your investment. Because machine learning and AI are, I think, still relatively misunderstood just by the world. What kind of resources does an AI or machine learning type startup need, both from a human standpoint, or even like server? I don't know.
That's a good question.
I mean, what do you, if I have an idea for developing some kind of machine learning or AI, like what kind of financial commitment am I looking at just to even prove a theory?
Let me think about how to answer that. So I think the biggest thing is, I think, making sure that you understand that it's probably not a product itself. It's probably a feature of a product. Mm-hmm. So I've made that mistake before, and thinking that just the technology itself was going to be like, oh, hey, this is going to end up being a home run, when we had to do way more, talking to customers in order to kind of figure out what's the application of it that's really valuable. But as far as the resources go, I think as long as you start very simple, I mean, it's not, it kind of depends on which angle. So if you're using like a machine learning for a vision sort of thing, like you were using the Mickey example, in that case, there are APIs. AWS has an API that you could use that would get you quite a ways. And in that case, you have very minimal,
cheap.
Yeah, very minimal expense.
You could upload 20 pictures of Mickey, train it, and then you've got a little algorithm or a little machine learning service you can use from them. You upload a picture of DeCoursey and it'll tell you if it's Mickey Mouse or not.
Yep.
And it's easy. It's pretty easy to do.
Easy. And what cost you, like, maybe, I don't know, quarter of a penny or something per request. So yeah, I think it kind of depends. Now, if you're and same thing with if you're trying to build a chat bot, something along those lines, then there's APIs that you just use. You don't need to train the model yourself, because ultimately, when you start thinking about who has the most images and who has the most language, it's probably not a startup. It's one of the big players. So you might as well use one of those. If you're doing more custom sort of non-vision, non-natural language machine learning, then it's tough to, I hate to say it depends, but it kind of depends.
To follow up with what you're saying there, I think Microsoft Azure, I'm not as up to speed on AWS, I think has like 30 different what they call cognitive services APIs available that'll do things like you upload a photo to it and it'll tell you what's in the photo. Like, is there a dog? Is it outside? Is it indoor? Is it like all those things, right? The colors. Then there's like text analysis, like getting sentiment analysis
Yep.
of the text, or summarizing an article and telling you what it's about, doing text to speech or voice to text, like a lot of different types of services that are sort of machine learning.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Different
But
kinds
that's
of
what you're
things.
talking about is don't reinvent the wheel in some cases.
There's
where-
services for those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's available.
And think about it from I think you always want to think about it from like, okay, well, what am I doing here? What is, and who, if there was a player out there that had a ton of data on this specific thing, then you might look into them and they may have an API to do it.
Mhm.
And in that case, you could use that. They're going to have more data on it, like sentiment analysis. Twitter should have had this one out a long, long time ago and had an API to see what's a nasty tweet, what's somebody complaining, which Google has those. But
Well, we've had Sickweather in here who does some of that with
Mhm.
Twitter to look for trending conversations about illness, and I don't know enough about how that works, but, enough people in Oakland say, I feel like shit today. And that might mean that something's heading that way, as all of us turn our heads to cough. When
Well,
I say that.
I think there are a lot of off-the-shelf APIs available to do things like analyze pictures or maybe even speech or video or things like that. But the use cases that are not as standard off the shelf is like, I have a big data set. I have a bunch of data in a database. What do I do with it?
We need to talk
and that's
about,
what like Bellwether does, right?
But we
It's
have
like
to talk
take all
about
this-
people too. We're talking about server resources right now and different APIs, but I've learned, because we employ a couple at Full Scale, that they quote data science, machine learning guys. They trend towards specific programming languages, Python being one of the more popular ones. So a lot of Python programmers are prone to automation. You're a Python developer, aren't
Yes.
you? Isn't that
Yeah.
like your original?
Yep, that's
That's your first hustle there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it wasn't my personal first, but
Right.
it's sort of our core. We use it for the large majority.
And I had never run into this, but a lot of the quote data science machine learning guys also use R.
Mhm.
And that wasn't a programming language that I was super familiar with, or quite honestly, I'd ever even heard of until we started talking about machine learning and
kind of a collection of algorithms.
data analytics and stuff like that.
Yeah, more of I would say more of like an analyst's sort
Sure.
of language.
Yeah, I don't run it. We don't have a whole lot of people that are quote proficient at R. And then you've been talking about image and optical recognition,
Mhm.
which a lot of computer vision
Mhm.
drives a lot of that. And that is sometimes popular with Python developers, but has seemed to have given many C++ developers a new renaissance and just something else to squirrel around with. So, C++, which was typically, used for embedded type stuff, meaning the software that was in your hardware.
Well, for what you guys do, does it really require a lot of server resources?
Yeah,
It does.
Yeah. That's
And
primarily our. We're cloud based, and
So that's just churning away in there, and it's basically running in layman's terms, it's running the RPMs.
Yep.
And looking through a bunch of stuff, but those different languages are part of what is going into that. What about like actual data science? Because at some point, doesn't a person need to determine whether the machine is actually learning or not, or set some kind of goal or specific outcome that we're aiming for?
yeah, and it kind of. So we have a handful of data scientists on our team that are basically checking these sorts of things, trying to figure out what is significant and what isn't. And then of course we also have our enterprise customers, and our enterprise customers, then there's additional sort of like there's stuff, we have with the system we use, there's a problem known as the sort of cold start. Or you see it now, like if you ever run any Facebook ads, they have the little, it's learning right now. So you don't, because there's not any data there. It's there's not much going on. So what we'll do is then we can kind of jump.
To dumb that down a little bit, when you say the quote learning, it's figuring out who to serve your ads to, which means that in that first day, your results might not be great, but
because it doesn't know
on,
anything.
it will be,
it doesn't know what's going to be relevant. Now
that's why I often wake up old ads rather than create new ones.
Yeah,
because it's got a lot of information in there.
I'm sure it'll actually probably know pretty soon. I think I saw something the other day that they were going to test out or roll out something where you load up your image and it'll tell you whether or not it's going to work or not.
It already does that.
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook. Well, they do that on the simplest basis of saying like, hey, you have too much text in here, and this won't produce a reasonable. The numbers tell us that you will get less action, and which, by the way, I've charged forward through that disclaimer before, and they're right. They're right. I don't know what it is, but like, for example, on Instagram, less is more. Not always the case, but less is more. Now, in regards to less being more, what you always get more of is satisfaction when you play Mixtape the game, Master Watson.
You know, I was walking by Joel earlier, who is the founder of
He is. And our chief marketing officer.
And he told me a great card that we have not done yet that I feel like maybe we should do today.
But I'm holding the card in my hand already.
Okay.
Do you want to play your card?
I got a good one.
All right, fine.
Okay.
Anyway, Matt Watson has drawn a virtual card out of the physical Mixtape deck. You can go to mixtapethegame.com, and you can also download Mixtape the app on iOS and Android. All right, Matt, would you go ahead, sir?
So you're at the grocery store.
Wait a minute. Who knows? The Matt 3 doesn't even know what we're doing here yet.
Give you a scenario, and then you have to pick a song.
Oh. And we will all name a song, and then we will vote. You may not vote for yourself.
Okay. You're at the grocery store. You see the mechanical horse. Your kid gets on the mechanical horse and rides it. You put in the quarter. What song is playing in the head of the mechanical horse?
Can I go?
Yeah.
Tequila.
Like that horse just wants a drink?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I can't play the band Fuck You by CeeLo Green because I feel like once again, that's the best answer. Am I wrong? Man.
I guess it depends.
I'm going with the theme to Rawhide.
Well, I'm going to go with Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On.
Dude, you're going to get that band.
That's my answer to everything.
Also kind of weird. It's kind of weird. This horse is singing that to my kid.
I guess we should play Old Town Road by Lil Nas.
Would you like to change your answer?
No.
I'm voting for Moody.
Oh.
What was yours again?
Yeah. Tequila. I don't know why.
Well, I'm voting. I'm going to be honest. I'm voting for you out of lack of better options. But,
all right, I'm going to go with the tequila as well.
Well, then you've won.
I mean, the song with only one word in it should always win.
It is a mechanical horse, right? So,
how much of that can I whistle without violating royalty?
Tequila.
Okay, well, here, something that does not require machine learning or artificial intelligence is the Golden Supreme Money Gun. Go ahead and fire that. I'm going to suggest you shoot that right at Watson. Just go ahead and unleash.
Woo!
Well played, sir. Well played.
Did you guys paint that?
No. Someone else probably did and then sold it as a golden money gun. But
it's
yes.
Pretty well done.
Yes. Anyway, congratulations on your mixtape win.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. And I want to point out that was done with no help from machine learning or artificial intelligence, which you can learn a lot more about when you go to bellwethr.com, bellwethr.com. Also find a note or a link in the show notes. Now, these guys are hard at work picking up the ones.
I need these later.
I'm not going to ask. I am not going to ask.
Another podcast. What
what? Wait, what? Are you recording another podcast?
Oh, we are.
Today?
Nah, later tomorrow.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think one important question on as we begin to wind down here is, Matt, is artificial intelligence going to kill us all?
Yes.
Said Watson.
I think I think general artificial intelligence, we got a while to wait. Famous last words.
Yeah, right before.
But, yeah, no.
Is that what John Connor said right before Skynet took over? He's like, nah, this isn't going to do anything.
Will Smith will save us.
Was that I Am Legend?
Nah, or iRobot.
Oh, yeah, there's too many of that.
He always saves us.
I mean, overall, like I said, I think that, Do you have any other input about the future of AI, or like, I mean, where do you see this going? Because the way I see it being used is just doing massively redundant things in many cases. Like you look at AI that's mapping stars where there's like a gazillion of them and figuring stuff out. Or then you have these, more useful and utilitarian applications like Bellwether, which are helping businesses provide a more fluid customer experience, or maybe learn what's wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably the biggest benefit that we'll probably see on a day-to-day basis is that, I mean, hopefully these businesses the businesses that survive are going to be using these sorts of things to make the experiences better, and not just better in general. I think that's been sort of what's happened pre today is a lot of, hey, what's the best experience? But again, this sort of technology enables us to have it. What's the best one for me? Give me the experience that I'm going to enjoy the most, and give you the experience that you're going to enjoy the most. And it may not be the same.
What do you think the future is, Matt?
Well,
or Master Watson?
I think a good example of you mentioned is like advertisements. It doesn't bother me at all if Hulu or whatever shows me ads that are more relevant to me. Like I don't need to see ads for Viagra or whatever, right? Like all sorts of things I don't need to see ads for. But show me ads about something I care about. That's cool.
Are you seeing a lot of ads for Viagra?
Sometimes. I mean, it depends on what you watch.
If you quit Googling it and asking Alexa about it would probably show up a lot less.
Yeah. I mean, but, it doesn't bother me if these sort of things are more tailored for me. That's cool.
It's better.
Cool. I'm good with that. Yeah.
I think.
Just tell me when Tommy Bahama is coming out with some cool new t-shirt I want to buy. Please. I'll buy that.
Another weird example.
Why?
I've never seen you wearing it. Is that what you're wearing right now? What's that swordfish?
It's a Tommy Bahama shirt.
Oh, there you go. Oh man. Invent AI to teach you how to pick out shirts, maybe.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I already see that I like, and I think the term bot, like you hear bot and it often gets a negative connotation. I think that bots are often really good. And I say that because you talk about a chat bot and people are like, oh, this is annoying. You're probably talking to a chat bot more than you think you would. The whole purpose of a lot of that stuff is just to get you to a solution sooner.
Well, we were at a meeting earlier and we were talking about how do we get support for something. And they're like, the only way we can get support for this thing is we have to call them. You can't even submit it online. And he's like, and it takes like an hour and you talk to somebody from some foreign country who is completely clueless and you can't understand.
Well, that's my
Bring
point.
me the bot, please.
Yeah. Well, and part of that is just, general. Okay. You're calling. It's like, hi, how can I help you? And you're like, customer service. And they're like, and it says, okay, directing you to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's not customer service. And, these kind of general things are, I think that it'll be impossible to truly measure the satisfaction and the lack of, like, how many times have you just got pissed off at something, or have you ever yelled at one of those things? You're
yes.
Like,
well, you mentioned earlier about being able to cancel versus you have to call to cancel.
Yeah.
And I had this with like SiriusXM. I was trying to cancel and there's
worst,
live
dude.
chat. And I'm like, I just want to cancel on the live chat. And they're like, no, sir, you have to call. I'm like, why the hell do you have a fucking job?
Yeah.
Why do you work the live chat?
Yeah.
What do you do here?
And that's my point. So
they
you
eventually
can see,
canceled for me. I went off on them. I'm like, this is bullshit.
and you clearly are passionate on the subject right now. But my point is like, that's a frustrating thing. And just generally being able to alleviate human frustration is a good thing, because it's hard to get off that call where you're pissed off at SiriusXM.
Why do I have to call you for half an hour?
And now you go talk to your wife or your kids, and they're like, Daddy, can we have food? And you're like, no. You're like, wait a minute.
And how likely are you to go back to them now?
Never. I had the same experience, by the way.
I mean, sometime I may go back. Yeah, sure.
I think
my current card doesn't even support it. So
I think if you can't just cancel online,
it's obnoxious.
It's
a regulation actually in California.
It is now.
Yeah,
but that's a newer thing.
Yeah.
And other things too are
Thank you, California. That's the first time I've ever said that.
Also requiring to tell you that a subscription's about to renew. How many things do you like get renewed and you're like, wow, I now just realized I've been being billed for that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Well, that's a challenge though. Like, we have 200 employees at Full Scale, and like that, I'd love to tell you that we're remarkably efficient at managing all that, but sometimes that's the case. And you look back and you're like, geez. Okay. So once again, Matt, thank you for coming in. Check out Bellwether. That's BELLWETHR.com. You can also find Matt on the Twitters at Matt, M-A-T, Moody.
Dropped one T.
Yeah. Yeah. What's a guy with no arms and no legs?
A Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the worst joke in the history of Matt's. Hey, it's true. You guys, if anyone can empathize with me. So we end episodes of Startup Hustle these days with the Founders Freestyle. And normally we let that be a freestyle, but I have a request for you today. I would actually like it if you could weigh in and give some advice to those that want, wish, or hope to someday include either machine learning or AI in what they're doing now, or to actually build a business around it. And don't say don't.
Okay. I would say make sure you talk to, before you even get started, talk to your potential customers. Find out what, and not necessarily do you want to hear, what they think they want, but just hear about what the problems are. Really understand the problem. And then from there, you kind of walk your way back. Don't start with, hey, it's going to be machine learning for X. Because I think at this point, most of those things are features. So it should be more about the problem that you want to solve. And then you're just going to use this technology in order to solve it. Or better solve it.
I think it's a good example at, excuse me, at Stackify, we do application monitoring. And so we get lots of metrics data, like say the CPU on a server or something. It's just a simple example. We don't need machine learning to do that. But if we added machine learning to it, it would be a feature. It would be an enhancement. It wouldn't be the entire product itself. But there's another company I just heard about in our space. So for example, dealing with log data that comes from software. It's a lot of data, right? And usually Stackify does this too. We handle log data. But there was actually a company that took all the log data, but the only thing they did with the log data was actually apply machine learning to it. You couldn't actually log into their tool and view the logs. They got the logs, they did the machine learning and threw the logs away, which was kind of cool. They're like, hey, you get terabytes of data you're never going to look at. We're just going to apply some machine learning to it and tell you interesting things you need to know. Like there's lots of really cool, interesting ways to use machine learning.
I guess in that case, I would say that's largely like the end result, though, is that it's providing some sort of value to you. Yep. Like, hey, here, this is something going on that's relevant to you. So that's ultimately the problem it's solving, is that you don't have to go wade through it.
Yeah.
And say,
you can't look at terabytes of data.
Yeah.
Well, there's a simple thing here so my machine learning algorithm detected the word feature a lot and from both of you.
Yeah.
And when I hear the word feature, I've literally trained myself to think, what's the benefit? Mm-hmm. And a feature without a benefit is worthless.
Yep.
It's not sellable, or it is 10 times more difficult to sell. So you mentioned if you're going to incorporate AI or machine learning into whatever it is that you do, talk to people, figure out what it's going to do. But if it doesn't have a benefit to it, you're just adding features. Like there's not, if you can't, you're not necessarily putting something in there that you can sell. Now, if you can explain, like what you just mentioned, Matt, you talked about looking at log data. Looking at log data is a thing of the past. Think of all the time you're going to save.
Yeah.
And, like the benefit of using Stackify, and go check it out, stackify.com, is that it reduces the amount of time you spend troubleshooting errors. And the benefit of that is you save manpower.
Yep.
You
find problems
faster. And that's a benefit.
Improve
That's
yourself.
a benefit. Looking at an app score or a couple things or things like that, those are features, unless you can put the benefits into play. And, if you are doing anything that's a B2C or B2B product, you got to help people either sell more or spend less. And that's the key. That should be the benefits that you're chasing. And in the event that you have an idea or the ability to help a business or a consumer or someone do both, then you're really winning. I mean, you got to get one of the two right to even stand a chance. Otherwise, you're just selling fluff. and especially when it's like no one's going to ever use a business product that doesn't help them sell more or spend less. Like the whole entire point of everything that you do in a B2B world is one of the two, right?
I would buy Bellwether if it could reduce my churn.
Boom. And there you go. And that's the benefit of it.
Yep.
So, when you get into the whole features versus benefits thing, if you can't, I always say it's real simple. I just use a simple acronym, FAB, features, advantages, and benefits. So what is the feature? That means what does it do? What's the advantage over the way you do it now or the competitive example? And then the benefits, what do I get?
And a lot of times the advantage has got to be 10x greater than the current way they do it.
Well, sure, because it takes time to put something new in.
That's the problem with most entrepreneurs are like, I built a better mousetrap. And they're like, they have 100 other problems. The building is on fire. They don't get around mice.
Yeah. Well, I was...
That's the reality.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, how many social networks have there been?
Right. Speaking of which, you can check out my MySpace page
and your TikTok.
Yeah,
they're both up to date.
But I should say our TikTok Startup Hustle has one, which gets like no engagement. So thank you. My machine learning algorithm's going to get to work figuring out how to get more views on TikTok. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.